Welcome to Messy Minded, a podcast for curious weirdos who enjoy true stories with the odd side quest. I'm Jess, and today we're celebrating a tiny milestone and a big idea. What happens when you try something with no guarantee it'll work out? We're talking about risk, reward, and that awkward space in between, otherwise known as life. We've all tried things, that part isn't special. What's interesting to me is what happens after. Do you shake it off and try again? Do you invent the chocolate chip cookie because you ran out of baking chocolate? Or do you start a garage band that accidentally becomes you too? The trying is ordinary, the results sometimes extraordinary. And if they're not, well, that's when you might just get the kind of embarrassing story that makes you the most interesting person at the dinner table. That's what today is about. People who took a chance, big or small. People who started something even if they weren't sure how it would end, and I want to share a few of their stories with you. I have my own little story to share too, so stay tuned. As kids, novelty is built into our lives. We're constantly trying, failing, succeeding, learning. But as adults, especially when we settle into routines, exploring our curiosities often takes a back seat. And there's some research to back that up. About 75% of younger adults say they actively seek out new experiences, but that drops to just 54% after age 45, which means nearly half of us are coasting rather than exploring. Because here's the thing, we need people to try, even when it doesn't work out. If every risk came with a guaranteed happy result, there'd be no tension, no growth, no surprise. The world would feel flat. For example, when my daughter was a teenager, we used to play The Sims. If you're not into computer games or just skip that one, I'll give you the gist. You create little digital people, build them houses, give them jobs, let them fall in love, and just kind of watch them live their lives. But then we found cheat codes. Suddenly our Sims never ran out of money. They never got tired, never got hungry. Their lives became frictionless and we could kick some serious tush in the sim world. But instead of us enjoying ruling the world with our perfectly well-rounded Sims, it got boring. Without the challenges, without the little fires to put out, the needs to balance, the frustrations to work out, the fun of playing the game kind of lost its spark. Life's like that too. It's the setbacks, the problem solving, the coping that shapes us. The friction actually makes it meaningful. A little tension and some hiccups is kind of good for us. There's a poem I like that essentially says that you cannot know great joy without the mirror of great sorrow. And I think that's true. The contrast and capacity of emotion and experience is sort of, ironically, where the good stuff of life is. Which is why these stories today matter. They're about people who stepped into uncertainty. Some soared, some stumbled, some landed somewhere in between. But all of them reminded us that trying, even when you don't know the outcome, maybe especially when you don't know the outcome, is what keeps the world interesting. I hope you enjoy. This is the What If? Caution Meet Wind episode. First up, a man with a vision the size of a planet. A dreamer, a builder, a person you've probably heard of. Although maybe you don't know him for this. We'll talk about people you know today and people you don't. Some are regular folks, just normal normies, and some are what I call notables. You know, the ones with a Wikipedia page they claim they never read. And our first notable, he wanted to give the entire world free electricity. Nikola Tesla. The notable with the wild hair and intense eyes had already dazzled the world by helping develop alternating current. He lit up the 1893 Chicago World's Fair. He'd worked with Edison, fought with Edison, and at this point, he was trying to out-invent the future. His next project was something straight out of a sci-fi movie. A 187-foot-tall tower on Long Island, topped with a massive copper dome. It looked like a cross between a grain silo and an alien communication hub. He called it Wardenclyffe. And his plan was not just wireless communication, not just radio, but wireless electricity. Tesla believed the Earth itself could be used to conduct electrical signals. He wanted to beam power through the ground and the atmosphere so that anyone, anywhere could tap into it. No wires, power plants, or electric bills. A global electrical network for free. And he wasn't just talking about it, he started building it. The tower went up. His lab was active, he had a staff, and at one point, J.P. Morgan was backing him. But Tesla didn't exactly pitch the whole story. Morgan thought he was funding a wireless telegraph system to compete with Italian engineer Marconi. You know, messages, signals, potential profit, something he could control. When Tesla finally told him, essentially, "Actually, I'm planning to give the whole world unlimited power for free," Morgan famously responded, "If anyone can draw on the power, where do we put the meter?" Translation, no profit, no deal. So funding vanished. The press started painting Tesla as an eccentric, more wizard than scientist. Meanwhile, Marconi successfully sent a wireless signal across the Atlantic. Investors fled. Tesla tried to keep it afloat. He mortgaged the lab, rewired his ideas, made grander claims, but the money was gone. The tower never fully powered up. By 1917, with World War I underway, the U.S. government grew suspicious. A mysterious metal tower transmitting God knows what? Communicating with German spies, maybe? The military didn't wait to find out. The tower was demolished and sold for scrap. Tesla never recovered financially. He lived out his days feeding pigeons and scribbling equations in notebooks no one wanted to read. He died alone, in debt, in a New York hotel room. Tragically cliche for a man with such a unique mind. 100 years later, the world is powered by wireless signals. Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, GPS. The tech he dreamed of exists. He just didn't get to see it.
Aww.
And that's the heartbreak of big ideas. Sometimes they work, sometimes they get torn down. And sometimes they show up decades later with someone else's name on the patent. Okay, let's talk about someone who did a thing so brave, so completely unpolished, that it rewired the way I think about failure. You guys, William Hung. In 2004, he was a 20-year-old engineering student at UC Berkeley. Smart, soft-spoken, not a trained performer, not TikTok famous, just a guy who liked to sing. And one day, this dude decided to audition for American Idol. No stylist, no sob story package, no ironic edge. Just William, a karaoke track of Ricky Martin's She Bangs, and more sincerity than anyone expected. He stepped onto the audition stage, nervous, yes, but not sheepish. He introduces himself, smiles wide, and goes for it. It was not good. Objectively, the vocals were rough. The dancing, like a Muppet on a trampoline made of jello. Randy Jackson broke almost immediately. Paula tried to hold it together, and Simon Cowell, ever the predator in a V-neck, didn't even wait for the chorus before leaning in. But William didn't flinch. When they told him he didn't have what it takes, he just smiled and said, "I already gave my best and I have no regrets at all." That line, that simple bulletproof truth, it did something. America roared, first in laughter, and then in something a little less expected. Affection. William Hung became a national phenomenon, not because he was talented, not because he was funny on purpose, but because he was sincere in a way that no one saw coming. He wasn't there to go viral. That was before that meant anything. He just wanted to sing, and somehow that unpolished, deeply cringe performance turned into a music career. He released 3 albums, including a Christmas album that I own. Joyfully, it brings me so much happiness. He got fan mail, interviews, parodies, and eventually he stepped out of the spotlight, finished his degree, and moved on with his life. Today he works in data analytics. And yes, still sings for fun, still smiling. And maybe that's the lesson in his story. Trying doesn't always look cool. I can personally attest to that. Sometimes it looks weird and a little off-key, but it's still often worth doing. William is proof that you don't always need to hit the right note, just the right nerve. The judges said no, but America said, she does indeed bang. So trying looks different for everyone. Sometimes it's a towering invention that never gets switched on. Sometimes it's a karaoke-souled engineering student throwing himself into a dream. And sometimes it's a teenager in borrowed clothes standing backstage at the Apollo Theater, too scared to follow through with her original plan. Let's talk about her. Well, our next notable very nearly didn't become one. It's 1934 Harlem. The Great Depression is in full swing, and the Apollo Theater is hosting one of its legendary amateur nights. The place is packed, standing room only. The crowd is not known for kindness. If they don't like your act, they will absolutely let you know, loudly and immediately. 17-year-old Ella Fitzgerald is backstage. She's tall, awkward, and by her own later accounts, completely out of her element. She's not wearing a sparkling dress. She's not a polished performer. She's just a shy girl in hand-me-downs who signed up to dance. That was the plan. But then, right before her turn, 2 girls on stage absolutely nail their dance routine. They're smooth, in sync, flashy. The crowd eats it up. Ella watches from the wings and panics. She cannot follow that. So when they call her name, she steps out on stage and changes the plan. She tells the band she's going to sing instead. No warm-up, no rehearsal, no idea how it'll land. The band fumbles for the key. She names the song Judy by Hoagy Carmichael. She closes her eyes, takes a breath, and sings. Her voice is clear, bright, effortless, full of soul. The crowd, the one that came out to boo, they don't. They lean in, then cheer. She wins first prize that night, and just like that, the door opens. That single decision, not to run, not to shrink, but to pivot, changed music history. She becomes a notable in every sense, but in that moment, she was just a scared kid who didn't want to bomb doing the wrong thing. She became the first lady of song, won 13 Grammys, sold millions of records, and influenced everyone from Billie Holiday to Beyoncé. So she sang instead of danced, and the rest became a legacy. So far, we've heard about people who tried to do stuff early, like in their teens and their 20s. But what if you missed that window? What if the thing you thought you wanted doesn't pan out? And now you're older, of course, and maybe out of time? Vera Wang knows a little something about that because becoming a notable doesn't always happen on schedule. She was a competitive figure skater as a teenager, trained hard, dreamed big. But when she didn't make the Olympic team, she let it go, moved on. She pivoted, went to college, started working in fashion journalism, and eventually became an editor at Vogue. Sounds glamorous, right? And it was. But she still wasn't creating, not really. Then in her 40s, something shifted. She was planning her wedding and struggling to find a dress she actually liked. A dress that felt elegant but not fussy, bold but not overwhelming, modern. And in that moment, she thought, maybe I could design one myself. Most people might have laughed that off. She wasn't a designer, she'd never gone to fashion school, she was 40 years old, which in fashion industry years might as well be 85. She didn't grow up around sewing dresses, but she did grow up watching fashion. Paris magazines, elegant evenings with her stylish mother, tapping her influence into her young mind. She'd already been in fashion for decades, as an editor at Vogue and designer at Ralph Lauren, but none of that prepared her for the moment she'd sketch her own wedding dress and forever change bridal fashion. She opened a small boutique, designed a few pieces, and within a few years, Vera Wang became the name in bridal fashion. Beyond the bridal runway, she actually went back to her first passion, which was figure skating. Wang designed costumes for Olympic champions like Nancy Kerrigan and Michelle Kwan, merging her love of skating and her late-blooming design career. Her gowns have been worn by everyone from Alicia Keys to Victoria Beckham to Chelsea Clinton. And a thing to remember is that none of that happened when she was 20, 25, or even 35. It happened after she worked hard, let one dream go, and made room for another. She's even quoted in Time magazine saying, "Honestly, my career is based on the fact I didn't make it." She's a good example of someone going, why not me, and just trying something. In her case, it really worked out. But even if she had tried and ended up having to hire it done, I bet she would have gotten closer to the wedding dress she wanted anyway. So good for her for trying something new. She may have missed the Olympics, but she stuck the landing on bridal couture. Not every brave leap involves a stage or a startup. It can be as simple as just showing up every day, like on purpose. Curtis Jenkins is a school bus driver in Dallas, Texas. And technically, his job is simple. Pick up the kids, drop off the kids, drive the route safely. But Curtis decided that wasn't enough. I was lucky enough to be able to talk to him myself. When we sat down to talk, one of the first things he told me was how reluctant he had been at first to give interviews. He had never set out to be in the spotlight, and his focus was always on the kids. But once his story did get out, people couldn't help but to pay attention.
Yeah, I waited almost, a long time before I even took a first interview. A lot of news reporter, local reporters, and then national, then talk shows was reaching out to me, and I was kind of like, didn't want to go at first. And then my superintendent, Jenny Stone, kind of sit down and talk to me and like, Curtis, you're doing some wonderful things in this district. And we have been watching you, and everybody's talking about you, from the teachers to the principals. She said, I didn't know you come over when you get off on lunch breaks and sit with the kids at lunch and have lunch with them and teach them how to sit at lunch. She said, your teaching never stops. The programs that you started on that bus is really big around the district right now.
Wow.
So they started a lot of things in the district that I was doing on the school bus.
Did you just like one day decide I'm gonna try this
No,
out?
I had my principal actually from my high school. He the one asked me to go in the classroom, and I was like, no, I don't think I should be in the class. He wanted to get me in the schools with him. He said, you have a CDL, which is, I was a truck driver at the time. He was like, why don't you get on the bus and turn that into a classroom? He said, the kids need you. You're very inspiring. Your energy changed the dynamics even when you was in school, and I saw that in you. So I had no idea what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. But just as a favor, I went and got hired on as a bus driver. And from that on, it was like almost, I kind of get teary when I talk about him because it's like his dying declaration. Soon after I start driving, he passed away. And, you know, the things that I saw that he wanted me to inspire, I saw it was like a little small world on that bus. And I started changing things day by day, like little exercises about picking the numbers, sitting on the seat where the numbers at, getting to know the person on the seat with you for a week. And then eventually all the kids got to know each other, knowing their favorite colors, their parents.
Yeah.
I mean,
you knew him ahead of time then?
my principal?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was my principal in high school.
Oh.
Well, yes, he stayed in touch with me. He was my biggest inspiration. He was like, hey, you know, you always had something in you and you inspire people. Even when I was younger, he walked in the classroom, he said, hey, man, when you have a good day, everybody in the room have a good day, even the teacher. He said, you have almost more influence than the teachers in the room. So I want you to do good so everybody can do good around you.
Wow. It's also got to be, I mean, he sounds amazing, but also it's got to be a nice feeling too that if you ever Google yourself, it's just kindness.
Yes.
It's really
I
nice.
got pretty much a lot of national awards around the nation. I got some of the biggest awards in the nation from being who I am and what I do.
Yeah. So I have, it was 2018 and there was 70 kids on your route, roughly?
Anywhere from 65 to 70, yes.
Okay. And then I have that you had bought them all a Christmas gift at least one year?
Yeah, well, it's a long story the way they got it. They kind of earned it because we put in roles on the school bus. Everybody had a role, from police officers to sheriffs to nurses. And they got paychecks during the week. If they showed up, they get like $5 bus bucks. And what I made to sell people, whatever they wanted for Christmas, they would get it. So they picked out what they wanted. And it was like invisible money, but it's like it was an incentive for them to do good during the year. And I had been doing it anyway, and a lot of kids wasn't going to get a lot of things. I started off doing a gift exchange, and my wife was like, well, I came home with a teddy bear wrapped up in a newspaper and a baseball wrapped up in a paper bag. And I was like, she said, you going to get it to another kid? I was like, yeah. Then I went back into the next day and I asked those children that brought those gifts, what was they and why did they bring them? They said, well, Mom didn't have any money, so I brought what I had, and that's my favorite bear. I've been had it a long time.
Oh.
And the other little guy say he got a ball from his uncle and he loved it. So they gave what they were so that the kindness and things that I had really been teaching them that caught on. They was willing to sacrifice to give somebody in need something, and I couldn't take it. So I went ahead and said, well, we're going to give all this back. We're just going to buy every kid on the bus what they wanted on the list. So I went out and actually used our honeymoon money that we was going to use and go on trip that year to buy all the kids what they wanted. And she was like, okay. She said, well, we can stay here and hang out with the kids for Christmas. We don't need to go anywhere. We can use that money. So I'm like, okay, let's do it.
That speaks a lot of her.
Yeah.
You must have been pretty impressed with her at the time. That's a lot for a woman to give up her honeymoon.
Yeah, she was like, hey, I know how passionate you is about those children. So, let's get them what they wanted and just use that money. And we can just hang out at the house with the kids.
I had written that you had bought Christmas gifts from money that you had saved out from your checks, but it's actually kind of a cuter idea that you gave up your honeymoon for.
Yeah, it was honeymoon money. Yeah.
Wow. She sounds like a keeper.
So we had been together a while, so we had got married earlier, but we had been saving for a nice honeymoon. So
yeah,
that's what the money that we've been saving for.
Oh, geez. Well, did you ever get to go on that honeymoon?
No, we didn't end up going. So eventually we're going to go to, actually, it's coming up November 26th again this year. So
your anniversary?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Got to plan something.
Yeah, we're going to do something for sure.
Oh, I was going to ask you if you wrapped the gifts yourself, or was it you and your wife?
I wrapped every last one of the gifts, every last single gift. I did not put them in a bag. I wrapped them.
That's so special, especially as a kid. You get a pretty wrapping.
I wanted the kid to be able to open it and then look on their face as they was opening it.
For sure. I had read about your bus democracy and that you had bus bucks
Yes.
and that you had said something about nurses and police. Like, what were the roles they had? How did that
Well,
work?
they had community leaders. We voted for police officers. Every seat on my bus was a street name. 2nd Street, 3rd Street, L 2nd, F 2nd, mean left, right, 2nd. They knew what street they lived on, which they sit on when they come here. And they pretty much just say if you was a police officer, the sheriff, a nurse, you come there, the police, if anything happened like a paper or pencil or something get left on a bus or a backpack, the police will start an investigation and find out who sit on the seat, who backpack it was. I mean, the police would make sure they have seatbelts on. And if they didn't have a seatbelt on, they get fined a ticket, which they get a ticket. And then we had a little court. We had a judge. We had a judge on the bus. We had a court on Fridays. And, if you found guilty for not putting on your seatbelt, a minute after you got on the bus, you would have to pay 2 bus bucks, which is the money you would get the week just for showing up on the bus.
Wow. Did you think of all that?
Yeah, it's a complex, big program in which now some of the schools are using it for incentives for. I mean, the school had got so in tune with me, even the library, when they had book fairs, they could actually use the book bus to buy books in the school and get snacks in the cafeteria. So
that is really cool. And what good skills to teach kids on just how to interact and like take responsibility for things that are going on around them.
And know how to count. We had a banker that knew every kid and what they had in the bank, what they spent, taught them how to add, little stuff, how to be accountable for and how to earn and be responsible. Most kids were buying stuff for kids in their neighborhood that they needed, like pencils and pens. They would actually see something and buy something for other kids that didn't have it.
That is pretty amazing. Just thinking, when I was a kid, I was kind of a shy kid anyway, but I don't think it would have ever occurred to me that a bus driver would even want to talk to me, let alone premeditate interactions to be kind to me. Not that I had any particularly mean bus drivers, but I feel like adults were kind of scary. And I remember some kids being rowdy and the bus driver having to stop and get up and yell at the kids to knock it off and that kind of thing. And
well, I had the police to keep the bus down. They took care of the bus now. So, I had a shy kid on the bus. He was kind of an introvert and never wanted to talk. Actually, he ended up being the president of the bus.
My goodness.
And he's a speaker in the school right now. He ended up being a student council. He's really good with talking. He never would talk. If you look at one of the videos, Armature Institute or Changing the World Out, look at that video. That kid on the back of the video, he was a kid that never talked. He was shy. He really didn't have good English. And now he's like a straight A student. And it brought him out of his shell.
Yeah. Well, and give them an opportunity. If it's a bus full of people that want to hear what you're saying, that's going to show up in other places. You feel like, okay, that worked out this time. I didn't explode.
Yeah, and I had all the kids to understand it didn't matter what role you had. Everybody's important. It didn't matter what leadership role you have. The highest role on the bus is the humanity. We all are humans. We're all the same. We had different nationalities on the bus. We started teaching each other different languages. Good morning, good afternoon, how you doing? We had like a couple weeks of each nationality say good morning in a different language.
This is and it should be kind of basic, or things that people learn at home, but we don't these days. And like, what would it be? How much would things change if this was a normal way for kids to go to public school?
Well, just think about it. How many people you know on your street? It's different now. Like, probably know your next door neighbor. You don't probably know the people 3 houses down.
It's true.
Well, school buses right now, literally kids ride the bus and really don't know maybe the only people they get on the bus with at that stop. They don't know other children on the bus. Well, I made it a normal to get to know everybody. Everybody had pretty much learned everybody's name on the bus.
Especially in bigger cities, the groove everyone falls into is you mind your own business and don't get involved with other people.
Yes. So it was like a different feel. It was a small community. I had literally kids coming to school early just to get with me. Like, their moms would bring them to school and would meet me and my little community in the pavilion in the morning and have a little bus talk before they go to school with me. It was like kids that didn't even ride the bus would want to come up there. And like I told them, if they're their friend, they have to be responsible for someone that's coming in their neighborhood. If someone comes in the neighborhood, you make sure you tell them the rules. We all have to be nice. We have to learn each other. We say, excuse me. We don't break lines.
Yeah.
We be safe. So it just kept getting bigger and bigger. People was walking by the school, actually coming up in there filming me in the morning. Like people will align the cars, will be outside the school looking at me teaching kids in the morning.
That's so you weren't a teacher at all before this?
No, but we have a purpose. I tell people we all have a purpose in life.
So this was your principal that kept in contact with you, that over time,
Yes.
at some point, he was like, you should be in the classroom. You're like, I don't think that's for me. And then he was like,
Yes.
let's do this bus idea.
He said, just give it a try.
Yeah.
Well, it was debate me because he knew I would go farther than just driving a bus.
He just needed to get you in there starting it.
Yeah, and I think that was the best move. That I was just patient and listen to him. I had no idea. Kids was getting on the bus and they wouldn't even say, they didn't even know the bus driver's name. I made it a trend for all bus drivers to start greeting their children in the morning and introduce themselves and get to know their names.
So your first year was 2018, or was that just when the story broke?
That's when the story broke. They had been watching me a couple of years. I had got a couple of awards way before then. I kind of ran and didn't want to be interviewed by no one because I was kind of like, just want to kind of be to myself. But my superintendent, Jenny Stone, explained to me how big and how much passion I do care for people wanting to be and make a difference. She said, I could be a game changer, not only here, but all over the world. People have to know it's people willing to make a difference in the world.
Yeah.
And it don't matter who you are and what position you are. And she said, you're that person, you can.
Also, bigger picture is someone being thoughtful and thinking through of what other people want, and then also building up skills for all those kids. Like, they're for sure changed. Think about if something like that happened for you, it'd for sure change you.
Yes, ma'am.
You know?
Well, they even put a bill in my name in Texas House of Representatives. They put a Curtis Jenkins bill, HR 1391. They voted it in the declaration. It was voted in. So it's in the history books. So
what does that feel like for you, like all of this?
at first it was a little much, but I can see why it's needed in people. If I can inspire people like my principal, Dr. Jenny Stone, she inspired me to, hey, just step out on faith and just do what you have to do. And all of us have the same power inside of us to make a difference. But the willingness got to come from us. We got to be willing to do it.
You had said that you were trying to plant seeds of kindness. Would you say it was Dr. Stone that planted seeds of kindness in you then?
Definitely, she was a big integral of that. She was definitely making me understand the impact that one person can make, the ripple effect that I didn't realize it was. I just got a message the other day from Australia. Man, he said, you're a celebrity out here in Australia. You know, I was like, what?
That's wild.
I get messages from Sweden and all over the world, actually. I'm glad that I can be that person, to be the face of who everybody can be. I'm everybody. I'm not just me. I'm everybody. We can be the same person. One act.
I mean, it must have changed how you feel about your job and your career and yourself. You getting all this affirmation going, yeah, you're doing great things and people are noticing. That must change how you feel, right?
Yeah, it makes a difference in my life. I just know I have a purpose. I realized how important a purpose is. One day I figured out that not only they can make a difference, I can be the one to help them make a difference. And just be the one to listen to them, let them know I care. One person, only one person just needs to let you know that you can and you will. And it's not hard for us to do. We just got to be willing to do it.
But don't you think that a lot of people feel like, oh, it's just me, it doesn't matter, you know, that kind of thing? Do you feel like that's maybe a hindrance for a lot of people from doing some acts of kindness?
I hear it all the time, and that is true. But that one person, just imagine, one person can inspire one person, and now you don't know how big that one person can end up being. Who knows? I mean, I'm just one person too. I mean, look at you right now. You're on the phone with me now, getting ready for a segment. So, you know, we can make a difference. All of us can make a difference.
You know what? Even on a smaller scale, I think of my sister. She used to work downtown Minneapolis, and she was just going to work like always, but she had been wearing just like a whatever dress to work. And there was a guy that was passing her, and as they were passing, he just said, that dress looks like it was made for you. And he just kept walking, like he didn't want anything from her. He just wanted to pay her a compliment and went on. And she was, that became my favorite dress for like 5 years.
Really?
He was like, made her feel good.
He didn't even know the impact that he made in her by saying that, though.
I think of that. So like when I see somebody else, like maybe someone's got nice shoes or I like their jacket, I try to remember, just tell them you like their jacket. Like it's probably going to make their day. And if nothing else, they'll be like, oh, she likes my jacket.
Just imagine with the children out there, though, what they need right now. It's like, what if they never get it?
Yes.
And what they grow up in this world going toward, I mean, what if they searching their whole childhood, then adult life, looking for one act that somebody could gauge to them when they was younger?
I saw one of the kids' quotes about you was, "He's the first adult who ever told me I mattered."
Right,
Whoa, that's huge. What if they hadn't met
right.
you? You just gave everyone such a gift, and it sounds like now it's being carried on. Do you still do this, or are you doing more like public speaking and such?
I'm in safety and security. I'm like the school police at the school now. So I'm in another role doing the same thing now.
Well, I'm glad they got you. That's so cool. Thank you so much, Curtis. I really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Curtis didn't build a tower or start a fashion empire that we know of, but he did change a few lives, one ride at a time. He never asked for recognition, but his school did notice they had an exceptional man driving the kids to class, in more ways than one. The school gave him a new car and a promotion teaching others how to show up like he does. Good for them. This man was living as a great example of how to human for those kids. This is the kind of story that maybe doesn't always make the headlines, but what it does make is great humans. On to more normies being all cute and thoughtful. In a small village in rural Colombia, there was no library. No one had access to books unless they left town, and most people didn't have the time, money, or transportation to do that. But Julian and Leticia, a married couple, loved stories, and they wanted to share that love with the neighborhood kids who passed their home every day. So they started simple. They put a few books on a bench outside their house, just left them there. No checkout system, no registration, just take a book, bring it back when you're done. At first, it was just a curiosity, then a habit, then a gathering place. People started coming by just to see what was new. It was a place to talk, to read aloud to their kids. The collection grew. Eventually, Julian and Leticia converted part of their home into a real lending library. They had shelves, seating, a reading corner. No one trained them, they didn't have a budget, and they weren't educators or organizers. They just saw a gap and filled it. I guess that's what she said, but they're not alone. In other parts of Colombia, a teacher named Luis Serrano started the Biblioburo, a traveling donkey library. 2 donkeys, Alpha and Beto, carried about 70 books across rough country roads so that kids in remote villages could get a chance to read. Whether it's a bench or a pair of donkeys, the message is the same. Stories don't need big institutions. What started as a bench with some books on it became the heart of a village. It just took the forethought of a couple of people who believed that stories should be shared, and acted like it. Now for The Pulley and the Promise. Brian didn't plan to become a project. He was a construction worker, the kind of guy who liked building things with his hands, listening to baseball on the radio, and fixing whatever was broken. And then, a spinal cord injury left him partially paralyzed. His doctors told him he had limited mobility and that he might not walk again. And, like too many Americans have discovered, his insurance wouldn't cover the physical therapy he needed to even try to walk. That's just crazy. So Brian built his own therapy rig in his garage. He made it from leftover lumber, salvaged weights, and a pulley system modeled after diagrams he found online. He studied rehab techniques in forums, downloaded medical journals, and joined support groups. Every day he dragged himself into that garage, pulled, balanced, fell, started again. He said the first time he stood up without support, he sobbed and immediately fell back down. But he kept going. 2 years later, he walked his sister down the aisle at her wedding. Not smoothly, not easily, but upright, which is the important part. I wish I knew more about Brian, but his story didn't really make the headlines. I found it through a small support group blog. And no, he didn't invent anything, didn't become a TikTok hero or write a memoir, but he built something out of scrap and stubbornness and used it to rebuild himself. That's just impressive. Full stop. She was billed as the most beautiful woman in the world, but it turned out that it was her brain that had the best curves. In the 1940s, Hedy Lamarr was everywhere. Her face was on movie posters, her name was lit up on marquees. Her image was so captivating it became the literal model for Disney's Snow White and Catwoman, depending on who you ask. She starred in films with titles like Ziegfeld Girls and Algiers and Samson and Delilah. She was by all accounts stunning, one of those people the camera just worshipped. And that actually became a problem, because while Hollywood was busy marketing her as a fantasy, Hedy Lamarr was back in her dressing room sketching out inventions. Her brain was busy. Always had been. She grew up in Austria, tinkering with music boxes and machines before she even stepped out in front of a lens. And during World War II, with the world in chaos and Hitler on the rise, Hedy Lamarr, actress and bombshell, sat down at a piano with her friend George Antheil, a composer, and started working on a way to stop Nazi torpedoes from jamming Allied signals. Together they came up with a system that changed radio frequencies rapidly, a concept called frequency hopping that prevented interception. In simple terms, it was the foundation for secure wireless communication. They patented it and presented it to the Navy. Not bad for a dumb actress, right? But the Navy didn't use it. They thanked her, smiled politely, and quietly filed it away. That's how it tends to go for a lot of female notables, especially the pretty ones. Brilliance boxed up and shelved until someone else can sell it. Some say it was too complex for the equipment at the time. Others say they couldn't imagine a woman, a glamorous actress no less, having come up with something so sophisticated. One helpful officer allegedly suggested that she'd be more useful selling war bonds. So Hedy went back to the studio lots, back to the rolls, the gowns, the close-ups. But her mind never stopped moving. She kept inventing. A better traffic light, a fizzy tablet meant to turn water into soda. That one didn't quite pan out. She was always observing, always solving, even when no one took her seriously. My guess is she just liked thinking. It wasn't until decades later that people realized that the tech behind her frequency hopping idea had become essential to Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, GPS, and the smartphone in your pocket. Long after her youth waned and the magazine stopped featuring her, long after the studio stopped calling and she stopped expecting any credit, the world finally caught up, and she was awarded the Electronic Frontier Foundation Pioneer Award for her contributions to wireless communications in 1997, which sounds impressive, but also a little like humans trying to patch over decades of ignoring her. If aliens landed and we bragged, "She won this award," they'd probably say, "Okay, but what does that mean? Wouldn't it be easier to just say she was an important inventor and we missed it?" Anywho, she didn't actually go to the ceremony. Her son accepted it, playing a message in which she said she was glad her invention, quote, was not done in vain. So by the time her invention was understood as foundational, she was already elderly, largely reclusive, and then gone. Hedy passed away in 2000, so she wasn't around to see herself be inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014. She once said, quote, "Any girl can be glamorous. All you have to do is stand still and look stupid." But she didn't stand still, and she wasn't stupid. She was brilliant. We just weren't paying attention. At least not until it was too late to matter to her. I found it interesting that Fred Rogers didn't get into television because he loved it. He got into television because he hated it. In the early 1950s, when TV was a loud, frantic circus full of pie-in-the-face gags and advertising aimed straight at kids, Fred saw something that bothered him deeply. Children, he believed, were being talked at instead of to. Entertained maybe, but not understood. And so, very quietly, very slowly, he decided to change that. Fred wasn't a natural showman. He wasn't loud, he didn't have big teeth or fast-talking charisma. He'd studied music, then theology, then child development. And when he finally made it in front of a camera, he sat down, put on a cardigan, looked directly into the lens, and began speaking in a voice so gentle, direct, and intentional. It felt like he was talking just to you. He'd say things like, "You've made this day a special day, just by being you." There was no laugh track, no commercials for sugary cereal, just Fred, a trolley, a couple of puppets, and a quiet faith in children's emotional intelligence. And Fred did not shy away from big topics. He tackled divorce, racism, death, anger. One of the most iconic episodes of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was when he shared a footbath with Officer Clemens, a black police officer, at a time when public pools were being desegregated by court order and met with violence. He wasn't preachy about it, he just showed two men, different in race, sharing cool water on a hot day. Later, he dried Officer Clemens's feet. And speaking of not being preachy, here's something I admired deeply. Fred Rogers was an ordained Presbyterian minister, but you'd never know it from watching the show. He didn't slip sermons into puppets or talk salvation. He met kids where they were, with gentleness, not dogma. His desire to spread the word of God was real, but it was dwarfed by something even greater. His desire to make sure not a single child felt alienated. That kind of faith, not forced, not theatrical, just lived, felt like trust. He showed just a remarkable kind of grace. And that was Fred. His revolution wasn't loud, it was cardigan soft, puppet-voiced and deliberate. And it lasted for 30 years. Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood became one of the longest-running children's programs in American history. He testified before Congress to protect public broadcasting, and did so with such sincerity that a skeptical senator changed his mind on the spot. It's a truly moving moment that you can find online, and if you haven't seen it yet, I do hope you look it up. In a world that prizes performance, Fred Rogers gave us a quiet internal strength in our formative years. He didn't sell us anything. He just reminded us that we were already enough. He wasn't a Hemsworth, but he was still one of the best examples of what a man can be. Fred's revolution didn't look like protests or shouting in the streets. It looked like slowing down, listening, valuing children as people. Everyone knows John Krasinski, right? A very notable. The Office, John Halpert, smirk game on point. The guy who made being quietly observant kinda hot. But what you may not know is that before he landed that role, before Scranton, before the world's slowest sitcom romance, he almost gave up. He had moved to LA in his 20s to be an actor, like thousands of others, took a bunch of odd jobs, made a little money, and waited for the big break. And waited. Nothing was happening. 2 years in, no steady work, no promising leads. He called his mom, told her he was done, that he'd given it a fair shot, and maybe it just wasn't meant to be. His mom didn't say, "Don't give up." She said, "It's September. Just wait until the end of the year. Just a couple more months, one more lap around the track." A few weeks later, he landed The Office, moving him from struggling actor to world-renowned actor, with just enough time on the clock. And just like that, everything shifted for him. Not because he pushed harder, not because he suddenly got better, but because he stayed just long enough for the moment to find him. That's the quiet risk of sticking around and not giving up too soon. Of course, that's survivor's bias talking. For every John Krasinski, there's thousands who gave it one more month, one more year, and never got the break. That's the risk. You don't know if you're one step from your dream, or one step deeper into a dead end. And the only way to know is to keep going. Just one more month. James Wright, a Scottish-born chemical engineer, now working at GE in New Haven, Connecticut in 1943. He found himself elbow-deep in the race to make synthetic rubber for the war effort. The country needed rubber. Tires, boots, gas masks, and no trees were sending shipments across the Pacific. So they threw scientists at the problem. Wright was mixing silicone oil and boric acid in a test tube, but he didn't get rubber. Instead, he got a gob of goo. He dropped it, and it bounced. That moment was not a failure, but not a solution either. Fast forward to 1950. That blob known as Nutty Putty, or Bouncing Putty, made its rounds as an odd novelty in a store catalog and at cocktail parties. A copywriter named Peter Hodgson, who was $12,000 in debt, sees his potential after he peeps this bouncing putty in a store window. He borrows $147 to buy a batch. I looked it up, and adjusting for inflation, that's about $1,858 in today's money. Anyway, he packaged it up in little plastic eggs just in time for Easter and dubbed it Silly Putty. At the International Toy Fair, it was underwhelming. Then the New Yorker runs a story, and suddenly all of America is chasing these gobs of goo. Hodgson sold 250,000 in just 3 days, and sales hit 5 million annually. The toy hits a nerve. Grown-ups using it for stress relief, kids pulling comic strip ink off the page for fun. Even Apollo 8 astronauts used it in space to secure tools. This little lab accident becomes a global hit. From war effort goo to eggs of joy. Talk about an existential pivot. So Wright never got rich off of it, but Peter Hodgson certainly did. When he passed in 1976, his estate was worth $140 million. What I'm taking from this is that trying doesn't always mean you'll fail, but when you do, try to rebrand your failure as something delightful. Last week, I got together with my friend and former employee, Jen, for a little conversation over a glass of wine. She had worked with me as a massage therapist for 5 years, right up until the pandemic. Like lots of small clinics, we had to close suddenly, not knowing when or if we could open again. And as the weeks stretched on, Jen started thinking about the aches and injuries she'd picked up from the years of doing therapeutic massage, The truth is, it's hard physical work. So instead of waiting it out, she decided to try something totally different. She turned her downtime into study time and made a leap into the wine world. You know the old saying, when life gives you lemons? Well, Jen decided to make wine out of it. So you're a ridiculously talented massage therapist. When did you first feel the pull towards wine and leave me?
Well, I was
Broke my heart.
really drunk watching a lot of Golden Girls
Oh, I remember this phase you were in. I remember this.
during the pandemic.
Yes. I remember that.
Drinking a lot of wine.
I was too, to be fair.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a common thread with a lot of people.
A lot of people are baking bread. Instead, you're like, you know what?
I had already been doing that.
Yeah.
Because I'd already been doing the sourdough thing for years.
You're like, I was doing sourdough way before Tiger King, so way
Yes.
ahead of the game.
Technically, yes. But yeah, so then I had figured I needed to segue into a different modality at some point because the style of work I was doing with therapeutic massage was pretty intense for my body and it hurts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And getting locked in a quiet, dark room with a sleeping human was making me really freaking kooky. Yeah, so then I just decided, wine's kind of interesting. So I started reading, and then I was like, you know what, maybe I'll try working at a winery and fast forward and working at a second winery and wine shop.
How does it start for you to get on this road?
I started taking classes. I waited till things were sort of back in person, and then I took the WSET, the Wine and Spirit Education Trust Level 1 class. It's pretty rudimental class for anyone, whether or not they're going into the industry or they want to
Sound clever at dinner parties.
Exactly.
Okay.
100% that. So after I got my WSET 1, then I started working at Fountain Hill Winery. That was just...
They were the first ones that kind of gave you a chance in the wine world? Is that kind of the
Right,
deal?
and they had just opened, so I could work in the tasting room. I've been at Seven Vines for 4 years.
It's the same vineyard. Mm-hmm. So you're just going to work there more?
Yeah.
Isn't that more physical again?
It is, but I'm also going to be in the tasting room.
Okay.
Which I was in the tasting room, so I'm just kind of going back to that. Working in the wine shop, ton of fun, really great, learned a ton, but 2 years is...
You're good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've taken WSET Level 1, WSET Level 2, taken classes in wine history, Georgian wine, Italian wine, probably some other stuff I'm not remembering.
Have you had a moment where you're talking to somebody about wines and they're like all impressed with you?
Maybe this qualifies as an example, not really sure. I went to buy wine glasses at Home Goods looking for a specific shape of wine glass, and this poor lady, I think it was maybe before Thanksgiving, so about that time where you're trying to acquire glassware for gatherings of people. The poor thing was just struggling. I was like, is there something I can help you? I'm like, I'm picking these up because I need a Pinot Noir glass. And they make me laugh because they're ridiculously huge and fishbowly, and it makes me giggle.
Oh.
Certain grapes need certain shapes of wine glasses. Not need. I mean, I'll never yuck somebody's yum. I'm never going to judge them. You can definitely just chug it too. It's fine.
Can you give examples of what kinds of wines are in different kinds of shapes?
So Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Nebbiolo, and Gamay need a little bit of a bigger glass that you can kind of get the aromas out of, and then it comes in and hits your palate. So if you were to put it in a smaller glass, like a white wine or a Sauvignon Blanc glass, then it's too narrow and you don't really get much of the aroma. It gets kind of stuck and it's just like straight acid. Just different shapes in the way they hit your palate and your sinuses. Usually if you have two shapes of wine glasses, you're good. Like the bigger bowl and then just a standard.
So do you feel like you've kind of found your lane, or is there just this is
Yeah.
a segment to a bigger picture?
I found my lane for now.
Okay.
I like to try things, so who the hell knows? But in wine, you're probably going to either educate, have a shop, work in the restaurant industry or something like that. I'm not going to have my own business where I'm doing dinner parties and stuff like that. I'm just too old and tired for that shit. 0% of me wants to have my own business anymore.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And wine making doesn't interest me either. I think it's cool, but it's a lot of paperwork. I like being in a vineyard a lot.
Just the vibes?
Yeah, I like working with the agricultural aspect of things, like the growing of the grape and seeing the evolution from stick in the ground in the winter that I give a vicious haircut to, serious military haircut, zip, to right now we're harvesting. It continues. It's not just a seasonal job, it's a year-round
Okay.
situation. And I do like working in the wine bar as well. It's fun to say, yeah, I had a hand in helping cultivate this product that you're enjoying.
Overall, it sounds like the career pivot was great.
Yeah.
Probably overdue, really, because I know you'd been having trouble for a while.
Yeah. The body doesn't always cooperate. It was the 3 minor injuries that I had in 19 that made me go, okay, maybe we need to figure something else out. I was thinking before, that little COVID thing had me on the couch watching Golden Girls.
Yeah.
All of it. From start to finish. Maybe hospice or, like a different direction within massage. But then, thank you for being a friend.
Yeah.
And, your second bottle. I was like, I think I'm going to work in wine. It sounds like fun. I find it fascinating. It's ancient and old and cool. And that's where orange wine comes from. It's an ancient form of winemaking. They didn't used to just press the grapes and then ferment only the juice. That's how you get white wine. If it were to be an orange wine, you're just gonna stick all the fruit in there and let it go, like a red wine.
When our family makes wine, and we have a few recipes, and that's our thing too. Is just all the fruit goes in there, and it's in a crock. I enjoy teasing you about it.
Yeah.
For leaving me, but I was with you with your injuries, and I saw what was going on. I wasn't shocked.
No.
It was just...
I didn't want it either.
I was sad because I'm losing my friend at work.
Right.
But I knew I could still have you in my life, or I assumed I would.
Yeah.
I thought we were friendly enough. It's always an odd dynamic when you're someone's employer because you never want to be the one initiating, let's go out, or that kind of thing. But not working for me anymore. It's not going to be like, bitch, let's go get some wine.
I think that the through line is the same with or without massage or wine in that I'm just curious by nature and I like to try different things, whether or not I do something with them.
You're also naughty by nature, not that I hate you.
I'm down with OPP.
Yeah, you know me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just super curious. I like to try new things. I am 110% cool with sucking at a lot of things. You're gonna be terrible out of the gate, right?
Yeah, it's true.
You don't know anything. You're an idiot. Cool. I don't have a lot of ego in most of any game.
You know what? That is something I kind of admire about you. You are
pretty humble. I'm pretty cool being pretty stupid.
I would say I'm a humble person, but I feel like if it's something where someone that's not friends or family are seeing, then I need it to be perfect. Which is part of the whole podcast journey, is the journey.
I was trying to hold it in.
Oh, man. That was gross.
You don't talk like that.
So disgusting. I need to brush my teeth and come back. But it kind of took me a minute to get over when I saw that people were actually listening to them, to be like, it's fine. I think that's kind of the overarching theme of this whole episode is just...
Be cool failing.
Be cool failing. Anyway, it sounds like you have a great situation going, so I'm happy for you. It's awesome. I still miss you at work.
I know.
But that's okay.
I always say, my friend Jess, the one I'd still work for if I hadn't quit the career.
Oh! Not every act of trying has to be grand or world-changing. Sometimes it's the smaller but deeply human things. Maybe it's daring to hang your hope on someone and build a life together. Some marriages last forever, some don't. But I've never liked hearing the term failed marriage. I don't think failure is the right word when people part after 20 years. That's 2 decades of love and growth, decision-making, learning how to fight, learning how to make up, and learning how to make concessions. And if you've changed so much that your paths diverge, I don't think that's failure. For me, that's proof that you were alive. And sometimes growing differently might mean choosing to live apart. Respecting that chapter of your life for what it was and carrying its lessons and love forward into whatever comes next, to me, feels like the move. And obviously, trying doesn't always mean relationships either. Sometimes it's a winter-long craft project, or something as simple as repainting a shelf. Learning a new language, changing to a new job you're not sure about, visiting a country you've only ever seen in books. You're being interesting simply by being interested, by leaning into your curiosities. And those small acts of trying, whether it's marriage, a craft, a trip, or a conversation, they don't always make headlines, but they do shape us. They're what make a life. And since we've been talking about trying stuff, big and small, I should probably tell my little story too. For years now, when I'm out in the world and I hear of something I want to look up when I've got the time, I'd write it into my notes app on my phone. I have other folders for music or movie recommendations, but the important folder in this story is my topics folder. One day I was looking for something to look up, and I saw in my app, how would a podcast go from a microphone to a stranger's ear? And that was really the start of all this. Although I had no idea at the time. This might sound weird to those of you that have been following this entire time. I didn't intend to actually start a podcast. Just hang on, I'll explain. I read about it as much as I could online, but I'm not very tech-minded, and I learn better by doing anyway. I should digress for just a sec. I realize I'm all over the place right now, but I give my mom a lot of credit for me having the career that I do. My mom and dad weren't from the Iron Range of Minnesota, but that was like their Alaska. They moved there to raise their family. They bought some land, tried their hands at hobby farming, and had like 10,000 kids. Well, 6, give or take. With the farming, after a lot of trial and error, they found their footing. Me being the last of their 6 kids, I pretty much only witnessed what had been working for them. Later, my dad was laid off with a full pension, and they decided to start a new life for their second half. They moved south, away from the Iron Range, and bought a small motel across the highway from a lake and nature trails. I was a young teenager before it even occurred to me to ask her how she knew how to run a motel. Before that, she had been a substitute teacher and a housewife. My mom, always the intellectual, said, "Well, I knew there were dumber people out there than me who had figured it out. I figured I'd just have to ask around. City office people, Secretary of State's office." That answer and attitude stuck with me in so many areas of my life, and I ended up starting a business from scratch before my 21st birthday. Not that I would necessarily recommend that to anyone. But I did it because there's people out there dumber than me who had figured that out too. And I thought of that advice again when learning how to podcast. So after much searching online, I bought a pod track and a mic. In both cases, I saved the receipt thinking I'd probably return them. It's way too late now, by the way. And somehow I own 3 mics now. Anyway. So like I said, at first I wasn't planning to publish. I was just, learning in my alone times. Which meant my mistakes didn't matter. And there were plenty. Talking too close to the mic, or talking too far away, speaking way too quickly, music that drowned out my voice, my research and writing wasn't as smooth. Also, I don't know what your lives are like, but I haven't had to read out loud as an adult for a long time. At least not for a prolonged period of time. But after a few tries, I had like 3 episodes, so I decided to publish. I did it quietly, thinking no one would find them, at least not for a while. I reasoned that since I wasn't advertising it or telling people about it, that no one was going to find those episodes anyway. What hadn't occurred to me was that those first 3 were packed with search words. So a handful of people did find them. Maybe you're one of them. And suddenly those mistakes were public, and I told myself I'd go back and fix them, but to date I haven't yet. Between my self-imposed timeline and just moving forward, they stayed. Now, I'm not sure if this is my lasting opinion, but at least for now, I kind of like them imperfect because those first episodes show me how much I've actually improved. It's only been a few months, but I can already tell I'm better at researching, writing, editing, even just sitting down and speaking into a microphone. I'm also getting better at being okay with something not being perfect. A huge feat for me. Also, the people in my life now all mostly know about it, and somehow this introvert didn't explode. So here we are, 10 episodes in. Once I published, I'd promised myself I would make 10 and then reevaluate. I was really surprised to see how many fellow nerds all over the world were listening to my nonsense regularly. So now, I'm committing to do this for a full year and give it another think at that time. So I'm here, and amazingly, you are too. Which means you're one of the early listeners. You've stumbled onto this little indie podcast while it's still finding its footing, which makes you part of this messy experiment from the start. Like it or not, you're part of this dorky little community. And that's kind of special. If you've enjoyed Messy Minded so far, the best way to help it grow is to share it with someone else who you'd think would like it. Recommend an episode to a friend who geeks out on strange history. This show's built for people like that. The curious, the messy-minded, the ones who want to know why, how, and wait, what? And I'll bring you some more good stories in the coming months. I love Halloween, so you can look forward to some spooky stuff from me in October. Before I go, here's a fun little word nerd detour. We actually have a word in English that literally means spectacular, embarrassing fail. Today, if I say something was a fiasco, you know what I mean. It went badly, really badly. But the word started out in Italian and it didn't mean disaster at all. It meant bottle. So how do you go from bottle to train wreck? There's a couple theories and I like them both, so the first is the theater theory. In 19th century Italy, if an actor bombed on stage, people would say he made a fiasco. Maybe that was shorthand for blowing it, turning what was supposed to be dazzling into a dud. French actors picked it up, then English speakers, and soon fiasco was the go-to word for any public flop. But there's another version, the glass blowers theory. In Venice, if a glassmaker was shaping some fancy vase or goblet and it went wrong, cracked, warped, or just unsalvageable, they wouldn't toss the molten glass, they'd reshape it into a plain old bottle. a fiasco. In other words, your masterpiece became a bottle, not exactly the glow up you're aiming for. Either way, in the 1800s, English had adopted the word as we know it today. A fiasco is when your grand plan, the thing you researched, practiced, polished, still turns into an awkward, undeniable flop. I found all of this reassuring because, hey, if the Venetians can turn broken glass into a fiasco, maybe I can turn my editing mistakes into a listenable podcast. So there you have it. Some people tried and changed the world. Some tried and it didn't quite work out the way they hoped. Notables and normies alike. So if you feel accomplished in your life already, that's awesome. But if there's still something you'd like to try, I say go for it. All it takes is enough curiosity to take the first step. Because you never know. You might become a notable. Better yet, you might become someone else's Curtis Jenkins. Or you might just learn something weird and wonderful in the process. That's cool too. Thank you so much for listening and being so supportive. Thanks again to Curtis Jenkins for talking with me last week. If you'd like to support him, you can check out his website, theprojectwalk.com. That's theprojectwalk.com. Curtis also has a children's book in the works, so keep an eye out for that. If you'd like to reach out, you can now find videos and stuff on the socials by searching Messy Minded Pod. Hey, look at me trying to be a proper podcaster. And as always, you can send an email to messymindedpod@gmail.com.